Yeah, I was just going to point out the issue of being connected and well off comes into play quite often. You mentioned Aleister Crowley, and it's the same situation with Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Manly P. Hall, is that these people were well funded enough that, they didn't have to bother with living, real lives, go to work and do this kind of thing. They were able to pursue their esoteric proclivities and travel the world gathering quote unquote wisdom. And there's something to be said for
100%.
that. Now, in Crowley, what I find interesting is you get this typical satanic inversion of the concept that vice is actually virtue. So his view was that he would commit as many sins as possible because he considered those to be virtuous, and just in typical satanic style of calling good evil and evil good, right? Like the Bible tells us, putting bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Now this goes back to a man from the 1600s named Shabtai V, who noted that the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, states that the Messiah would come either in a generation that was altogether wicked or in a generation that would be altogether righteous. So he figures, well, can I imagine a generation that'll be altogether righteous? Yeah, not likely. But how about a generation that's altogether wicked? That seemed more likely to him. So he figured, I'm going to start gathering a following and encourage them to commit as many sins as humanly possible, or the twisted motivation that would cause the Messiah to come.
That was the year 1666 too, by the way. Go figure.
Nice. So, I mean, you have this concept of, it's okay that we're committing all kinds of sins and teaching people to do so because we're so deluded, right? That we have a concept that this is going to bring about salvation. And this is sort of the psychological and spiritual band-aid that these people have to place over their souls to do these horrendous things and delude themselves into thinking that we have ethically acceptable reasons for doing so. That's how bad it is.
Yeah.
I think there was another reason why the Nazis get a lot of attention. Okay, speaking as a Jew, I can admit that they were quite stylish. I'll give them that much.
Hugo Boss made their uniforms.
Appreciate that, Ken.
By the way, while we're at it, I did want to read a quote from G.K. Chesterton. He said, I could do a great many things before I came to definitively antisocial action, like robbing a bank, or worse still, working in a bank.
Well, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that.
Well, the thing about Saturn, though, that is interesting is the Jews worship their day of rest is the Saturn day or the Saturday. In fact, Jesus in the Bible, he disappears from 12 to 30. Why does he come back at 30? It's because the ancients used to say that you're not able to be a teacher until Saturn comes back to the point where you were born. And lo and behold, Saturn takes 30 years to go around the sun. So that's why Jesus came.
That's not the origin of the Sabbath. Doesn't have anything to do with Saturn.
What is it?
It comes from the creation week in Genesis 1. Doesn't have anything to do with Saturn. Doesn't have anything to do with the planets. Just the 7-day week that precedes the idea of Saturn worship.
Yeah, you really can't say it's.
in other words, the words,
it's like Saturn in English.
What I meant is modern day Jews.
To something that happened millennia ago. That's just modern day English wordplay.
Right.
Right. That's all it is. But it's the Saturday, so it's the Saturday.
It's modern day. It's modern day magic craft too. Most of the people that practice magic use the 7 days of the week to correspond with the 7 ancient planets. Mondays, the moon day, Saturn, Sunday. But that doesn't mean it's historically correct. You have to look at how the calendars were birthed and all this other stuff to see what's historically correct. I would think anyways, but I'm not a historian, but I know how magicians use the 7 days of the week and what they mean, for sure.
You don't have to be a historian. You just have to know English isn't that old.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I want to.
First, I'm doing my Queen wave right here.
Wonderful. You are the winner of
Yes.
America's
Queen as in Freddie Mercury?
Radio
I'm
Gaga.
just joking,
Come on.
Ken. You know I love you, Ken. I'm just joking.
Something that I think would pull together a lot of the things we discussed. So like you're talking about pop culture, and we talked about what we all know would be called the externalization of the hierarchy, right? Today, people know more, and I'm going to keep using the term occultism. You'll have to forgive me. It's just one of those things. We all know that, for instance, something as everyday as a music video or performance nowadays is turning into a magical or occult ritual, right? It's in our faces. And I just wanted to read you guys a quote of something I noted in a book I wrote that's called Aleister Crowley's Influence on Pop Occulture: How an Obscure Occultist Influenced Culture from Beyond the Grave. And here's what I noted there. With regards to his influence on various forms of quote unquote art, Crowley was quite the muse. Amusing? When the great artists of old, from painters to composers et al., commented on their craft, they inevitably made reference to having the goal of glorifying God thereby. Conversely, when the quote unquote great artists of today commented upon their craft, they inevitably make reference to deconstruction, to rebellion, to smashing convention, to breaking taboos, etc. And is it any wonder we end up with that which can hardly be called art anymore, but is more about illustrations of shattered worldview philosophies? And this is what our culture is feeding us and is being fed, is that it's all about destruction. It's all about, I mean, we're to the point where we're so fat and comfortable in first world countries that we've attacked reality itself. We've attacked God's creation. We've attacked reality to the point of denying that this universe is a real place. We've attacked philosophy. We've attacked truth. We're to the point that we're deconstructing ourselves and our own bodies by all these things, such as that you can claim to be whatever you are, regardless of the law of identity. You're just whatever you are, because that's deconstructed. We're to the point of self-destruction at this point in our frenzied rebellion.
Sure, part of the cube that we discussed earlier, the square, the cube, the three-dimensional object that the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians all worship in various forms. And those 5 points, the 4 elements and the 5th point of consciousness, when they are represented in one form, they represent enlightenment.
Okay, I got a question. So as a Christian, how do you think that I worship the cube? This is new to me. How do I worship the cube?
Well, first of all,
circles around it. I don't know.
I've listened to you for a while, and I don't appreciate the suggestion that I'm criticizing Christianity or any other religion.
You just said we worship a cube.
Nah,
so
he was just asking for
how.
clarification. He's just asking for clarity. He didn't take it as a shot. He just said, how are they worshiping the cube?
Okay, well, I don't know how you can interpret what he's saying because he said it, but I will answer the question. The cross, when you draw the cross up, the cross is the astrological symbol and part of Saturn. The symbol of Saturn, as we discussed, is the cube. When you take a cross and you expand it and you fold it three-dimensionally, it forms a cube.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I worship the cube. So because
that's not
Christ
the origin
died
of the cross. That's not the origin of the cross either.
No,
the origin of the cross is from sun salutation.
Yes, it's the zodiac wheel, and it represents the turning of the wheel, and it represents time.
No, it represents somebody's. It represents somebody who wakes up in the morning, faces the sun, and goes, "Wow, beautiful!" And you look at their shadow, and it looks like the cross. That's the origin of the cross.
That's one interpretation. That there are millions.
Yeah, I was told that.
I got to. So you said earlier that we can't reduce these symbols to one thing, and now you're saying that you're reducing the cross to this.
Nope, I think that's a leading suggestion. I'm not reducing.
That's what you said earlier. You said we can't reduce symbols to one simple meaning. They're
I did say that. I'm not reducing.
But you just said that the cross is a cube. So you just did that.
Everybody has yes, and I'm saying that everybody has their own interpretation of what the pentagram is. Everybody has their own interpretation of what.
You said everybody who's a Christian worships the cube.
Well, they do in essence, but they also worship the cross under various other different definitions.
But you had to do like origami to get the cube.
Why is that funny? It is the active and passive principles. It's the phallus and the yoni, the vertical and horizontal bar. That's another interpretation of the cross. If you turn it sideways, you get the X. You get the active and passive principles of fire and water.
But you keep flipping back between it being the case and it being an individual interpretation. So it can't be both of those things. Like, is it objectively that, or is it just?
But it can. In magic, things can be. A symbol doesn't have to be one thing or the other. The circle, especially sacred geometry,
right, but
the circle has many truths to it. The cross has many.
The cube isn't Saturn neither. That's the cube is not Saturn, and the Saturn is the hexagon because it's the
I'm not
planet.
Talking, so that I agree with.
The hexagon, and you can create a cube out of that, but that's not the point. The cross can be turned into anything you want it to be turned into. Turn it sideways and bend the edges, you get a swastika. It's the sun wheel or the sonnen rod. There are various interpretations that you can derive of the cross.
So is it subjective and interpretive, or is it something that's objective? Can you tell me which it is? Because it's one or the other in your argument.
I believe that it is both, Jay. I think that you can have an interpretation, and your interpretation is right based on your belief system as a Christian. I have no belief system, nor do I have a belief system that I'm an atheist, as if that's some opposite belief that people have.
All truth is relative, is what you're saying.
I don't even say that it's that. I think things just are. I think it's I am the I am. I think that things are as we perceive them, and our perceptions change, and we should allow them to change, whether that's through science or it's through faith. And I think that we need to allow ourselves to change our perceptions and not hold on to a belief system, because if we do that, as long as we don't abandon our faith in the advancement of knowledge, if you will, as Solomon asked for wisdom and was granted wisdom for wisdom's sake, kind of like Joe was saying, then I think that this allows us to have a much more balanced approach to the way in which we view the world, rather than identifying ourselves as Christian or Muslim or atheist or Jewish.
Okay, but what you said actually is a belief system. So just saying I don't have a belief system and then saying those things, which are a belief system.
It's a belief system of not having a belief system. Yeah. But incidentally, Solomon didn't ask for wisdom's sakes. He was asking for wisdom because he was a very young man who suddenly became king. He straight up needed the wisdom that would be utilized to rule his kingdom.
Solomon took a dive too, by the way, at the end of that story.
Hey guys, I need to jump off.